Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a special guest with me here today, an expert on sales and leadership, someone who's been in the hospitality industry, so who has lots of experience working with conversations that we have with potential clients, conversations that we have to enroll people. And she's coming from a different industry than we normally talk about, but I think it's going to be very relatable. So hang tight for just a second. We'll be right back.
It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur.
Awesome. So Ali Cammelletti of Spark Your Mindset brings over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry, focusing on leadership and sales. Ali helps leaders build resiliency and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors and sparking mindsets. This is done through team building, customer service, and sales education, as well as one-on-one leadership coaching. Welcome to the show, Ali.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I want to start with, how did you get into this? Usually I ask people because I know entrepreneurship is a meandering journey. So what has it been like for you?
You know, I have been an entrepreneur for, I want to say 17 years. I had a bit of a stint there where I went back and got some more skills and just realigned with really what my focus was. But I feel like I've always had it. Like I can remember as a kid, literally going through the phone book and doing cold calling for my stepfather promoting his business. And he would probably roll over if he knew that right now. But that was at probably, 9 years old.
Wow. Definitely not afraid to talk to people, which is a valuable skill as an entrepreneur.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of always been in me, and growing up around it with my parents and my grandparents, it's just always been a part of who I am.
Yeah. Awesome. So you named your business Spark Your Mindset. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah. I actually just rebranded during COVID when I knew it was time. When I started this business, and it was Cammelletti Consulting originally, I was doing really more of a sales focus. And I like to kind of leave it up to where the journey takes me with my business a little bit. I learned that the first time where I had it all structured and thought this is what it was going to be in my business plan, and then it went a different direction. And so Spark Your Mindset is literally where my business started to lead, and it just felt right. I went through this whole branding, right? You coming from marketing, you get that, where I had a good friend that she took me through the branding experience, and it was either spark or mindset. And a lot of my ahas come from sitting in the hot tub. And I was sitting in the hot tub and I'm like, no, it's spark your mindset. And she even's like, Ali, are you sure? And I'm like, absolutely. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does sparking one's mindset look like? What's the value in doing that?
Oh, it's taking them to a place where they think differently. And the more I've been working in leadership over the last few years, as COVID has kind of shifted in my business, it took a huge stop. And so getting back and doing more of this work, I actually have had people say, you make me think. And that is always my goal. Like, I want you to think differently and just be open to thinking differently, because I feel like that's when we really create that focus change that often really just needs to happen.
Yeah, totally. What are some of the things you notice? I know with people who come to you or with organizations that come to you, what is that? What are some of the common places you find people where it's like, okay, something about this mindset or this dynamic needs to shift?
Oh, it's always so different. It is always so different. Sometimes it can be deep trauma that they're experiencing and they hadn't really pinpointed it, and it's coming out in their relationships with their employees, right? Or even their coworkers. And so taking it to that next level of digging in there and just asking more questions, right? I'm a very curious person, which helps. And
that helps a lot for sure. Yeah.
But it really depends. Everybody's different. You know, being in hospitality, I do run into a lot of perfectionism, people pleasing, micromanaging, and just kind of bringing them back from that and looking at how, if they make that shift with boundaries and really supporting others on their journey, how much healthier it is for everyone involved.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I'm sure there's a lot of like dynamic shifting that can occur once people who are, especially people who are working on a team like that, when they start looking at who they're being and how they're showing up, that it must have some amazing domino effects in how that trickles down into the rest of the team and the organization itself.
For sure. I had an owner recently ask me, like, what's your favorite personality assessment? And I am a bit old school. I love DISC. I do, because I bring it into sales a lot and it works for what I do. But I said, I use DISC, but I also know attachment styles come into place, as well as astrology.
Yeah.
What's your sign? Let's dig into all three, because that's really who makes you who you are. We can't just put you in a box and be like, nope, this is who you are. This is how you operate. And this is what you need to do.
Yeah. Tell us more about DISC. I haven't heard of DISC before.
Oh, yeah. So it's an acronym. It's dominance, influencer, steady, and compliant. And so it's all about communication. How do you like to be communicated to? How do others like to be communicated to? And so often I'll hear people be like, I don't want to do that because I don't like it being done to me. And I'm like, so this is why we want to just be open to different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Because you are only a certain percentage. There's another percentage out there, and this is what they want. And sometimes they're confused. They're like, why am I struggling and have this weird, uncomfortable friction with somebody? And I just start asking questions, and they're like, yes, they're that and they're that. And I'm like, well, so potentially you could be a major influencer. So it's like the top 50%, you're usually 2 out of the 4. And you're working with somebody who's more dominant. And so if you're an influencer, you're fluffy and you're all about the experience, and the dominance, like, just get me the answer and let's move on. Mm-hmm. Right? There's going to be friction.
Right. There's going to be friction unless you start learning that other people operate differently than you. Yeah. I imagine that has some beautiful benefits when it comes to leadership too, because understanding that the people you're interacting with are coming from different places is hugely important.
It's so important. And a lot of entrepreneurs, not all, run in that dominant, which can be perceived as like a little bit of a type A personality. And so there's conversations of like, seriously, Allie, I want to get into work and do my job. I don't want to sit and talk with them and ask them how everything is. And I like that they're honest and transparent with me. And I'm like, well, so you can just do what you want to do. But what if you did it this way? What do you think that would look like?
Yeah. And what would that create?
Connection.
Yeah. Awesome. So what about the way sales comes into play in this conversation? Because I know that's a huge component that, especially a lot of the people listening to this, we've had different episodes on this show about sales and about doing it from a heart-centered place and all of that. But I'd love to hear your take on it, because oftentimes people who are heart-centered coaches, holistic practitioners, that kind of person, they really shy away from sales and they see it as, the most evil part of their job that they have to do, or that they, don't even acknowledge that that's a part of their business yet that they have to be doing. So what can you share about that process and how it relates?
I will never forget a conversation I had where I really first started talking about it as being sales, when I had manager say to me, Allie, you have all this experience, but you really don't have sales experience. And at this point, I was going back into the workforce after having my own business for 9 years. And it took me a bit to sit back and think about it, because I always thought sales was an ugly word too. No, used car salesmen, it's slimy, it's pushy. And then I came back and I'm like, are you kidding me? I owned an event planning company. I was selling people peace of mind. They weren't walking away with a big screen TV. I've absolutely been in sales, but I do it differently. I see it as relationship building sales. And that is the base of all the sales that I focus on. It's all about how we build relationships. It's how we build trust. It's how we empathize with people. It's how we put them in the moment with what they're going to experience with this product, that whatever it is. I mean, I do a good amount of when I'm doing sales coaching, it's vacation rental management. So it's vacations, right? They're people staying in houses and what they're going to experience on this trip. And I bring in DISC by looking at, these are the questions this type of person's going to ask. This is what your focus is going to be. If they're asking this question, and maybe that puts them in the dominant where they're not fluffy, right? You're going to focus more on putting them in the moment with, oh yeah, so you want to be outside of Boston, but you're going to be traveling into Boston for work and telecommuting. You know what? The best route is to take this route, and you'll be able to get there pretty quick and not have to worry about traffic if you leave at this time. So you're still having them visualize their experience, but it pertains to what's important to them in a more direct way.
Yeah.
Whereas other times you're talking about, this house is amazing. It's right on the ocean. You're literally going to be able to walk out that back door and go through the sand to the ocean every morning if you choose.
Yeah.
Take your coffee, walk on the beach. Very different.
Very different. Yeah. But the point is that once you're aware of these different types, and this is true for every industry, that there are people who receive information differently, people who learn differently, and everyone has a different set of values when it comes to what's going to encourage them to invest in a program or a course, or to finally tip over that fence into the, yes, I'm doing this. Yes, I want this side of things. And if you can be aware of that in advance, then you can hit every one of those marks when it comes to your sales page copy, or like you're saying, vacation rental write-ups. The same is totally true for selling a program or a course, that different people are going to value different aspects of the information. Like some people need to hear the imaginative, just imagine waking up and having this experience. Imagine interacting with your partner and having this experience. Or the dominant person is going to want to know exactly, what am I getting out of this program, and how is that value adding up so that I know that I'm making a smart investment? What's the return going to be for me? So being aware that not everybody thinks the way that you think, and being able to account for that in advance. And also, if comes down to a sales conversation, knowing what questions to ask so that you can elicit that good feeling, that feeling of alignment, and that this is definitely for me, for every different kind of person, which maybe there are only 4, maybe there are more than that, depending on what personality typing system people like to use.
Yeah.
That is like the most mindful way you can do business, is because you're actually acknowledging not everybody thinks like me. And if I can be aware of that in advance, then I can make everything I create so much more compelling and useful for people.
So true. And it goes back to, hospitality. We talk a lot about the golden rule, treating others how you want to be treated. I'm like, you know what? Let's put that in the 80s. Let's take it up a notch. There's something called the platinum rule. Let's treat others how they want to be treated. The only way you know that is by asking questions. I use something called the 4 levels of learning, and it's through the Tiger's leadership piece that I do. And it's objective, reflective, interpretive, and then decisional. But what will happen often if we're uncomfortable with sales, we'll go objective and straight to decisional instead of really taking that time with them, because that will lead them to the ahas and the answers without you doing a hard push as well.
Yeah. Which is such a more compelling way to interact with sales. Like, it's so much easier for someone to want to say yes to something, and so much easier for you to have that conversation if your main objective is finding their true aligned yes or no, rather than trying to coerce them or convince them or jump to the part where they say yes or no. Having them basically get into the mindset of convincing themselves whether this is right for them, or finding their true aligned, no, this isn't for me. That is a totally different way to go about that conversation. I'm really grateful that my mentors sort of taught me that early on in my business. And it's so much more fun to have sales conversations from that space too, because you're really with them, you're on their team, helping them get curious about what is actually a good fit for them or not. And if it's the program you're offering, then great. And if it's not, that's also great, because it's actually a lot more work to have clients that don't want to be there, that you've tried to convince are ready for this, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I come from a very values-based mindset of, this is how I operate. These are my values.
Yeah.
And if you're always going to look at money first, we might not be a good fit, because I know that if we implement these practices with your team and focus in this area, the money will come. It's the flow.
Yeah, totally. So I know there are a lot of people listening to this who are solopreneurs, and probably some of them that are also either still working in a corporate environment or trying to make their side hustle into their business, into their lifestyle. And there's also people who are maybe wanting to grow into being a leader on their own business and having more team structured below them. Do you have any advice for people who are either on a team already or are trying to build a team around them? What are some things to keep in mind from the get-go when you're structuring that, when you're building the team?
To understand your people, to spend time really understanding what's important to them, to build that cohesiveness and respect and empathy and relationship build. And something that's come up a lot lately is that you don't want to be surrounded with everybody that's just like you. Embrace people's diversities and how you all come in as a team. The Tigers platform that I use being an acronym: trust, interdependence, genuineness, empathy, risk, and success. Diane Crampton, who developed this, the reason why she loved Tigers so much is she looks at teams like a tiger and its stripes. They're always different. Mm-hmm. If you try to go and use a model and replicate it to your own, I'm not convinced it's going to work. You got to make it part of your vision and bring that team together in that way.
And every business is different. I mean, I see it all the time where two people are running the exact same business and have the exact same niche, but the different strategies are going to work better for them because they have different expertises. They have different qualities to the way they lead on that topic that need to be honored and expressed in order for it to feel fulfilling and actually work as a business model.
And understand the other leaders around in that team as well, depending on the dynamic. I just had this conversation with a leadership team that they had a shift in management that they thought was a good fit. Didn't work out. And they're like, Allie, what advice would you give us, being that you were really seeing this and involved in this? I said, well, first thing, you have strengths in this and this and this in your other leadership. Yeah, you really want a coach. This is who you want in this position. You want somebody with that coaching strength. And when you're looking at revenue management, and they're all numbers, those don't always go hand in hand. But you have somebody else that's really strong in that area. So this will fit that gap that I'm seeing in your organization.
Awesome. And having somebody to come in and help point out what those gaps are so that people can have every aspect of the team that they need fulfilled has got to be so valuable.
Yeah, especially this company is going through a ton of change on multiple levels. Like somebody that can really be that empathetic, supportive leader is key.
Yeah, super awesome. So tell us again, you mentioned there's team building, customer service and sales education, one-on-one leadership. What kinds of businesses do you usually work with? I know you said hospitality industry, but tell us a little bit about the working process in case people are listening and need to hire you to come in.
Well, what I do flows into all different industries, right? It just so happens that I ended up doing this piece of vacation rental management. So it's a big part of the conferences I speak at, and I'd say 80% of my business. But I also work with like a wholesale florist that has been somebody that it's been a great fit with. Resorts, a lot of resorts. And I am based out of Bend, Oregon. Sometimes I do have clients in my area. I don't have any clients in my area. I go as far as Massachusetts, Florida, West Virginia, all over. And so it's just part of the great thing of being able to telecommute like we do. I do a lot of Zoom, one-on-one Zoom, and even with teams like in Hawaii during COVID, when travel wasn't really that great and this vacation rental company just needed that support, I did it Zoom with a team of 7 and it was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. It's great being able to work from wherever you are. And also, I'm imagining people are listening who are like, I could be doing that. I want to do that, because potentially getting flown around the world to go to vacation destinations to help work with teams would sound really fun to certain people.
It's so true. I was explaining to somebody that the end of August, I'll be going to Florida. One of my favorite areas, Panhandle 30A area. Mm-hmm. And she takes care of my daughter. She's like, Allie, can I go with you? I was like, that would be so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to include that in the budget next time. That's awesome. So what advice do you have for somebody who's maybe starting out in business or wanting to develop some sort of curriculum like this that you're going around and teaching and supporting people with? What advice would you give them on that journey?
What I have seen to be the most debilitating for a lot of entrepreneurs that are looking to launch something is this belief that they're not good enough, right? That imposter syndrome. My advice to you is get your mind right first. Let that go. Because if you don't feel like you're good enough, people are going to smell that and see that. Get that confidence there and focus on really what you bring to the table and how you are different than others, right? So much of business is like, what separates you from the rest of everybody else that's doing this? Mm-hmm. What is your niche? And just like you read my branding statement of that resilience piece, it's a big part of what I bring in with leaders is understanding how to build resilience with themselves and team members. So know your niche, know you're good enough, and then just do it. Mm-hmm. Go out there and do it and love what you do. Be passionate about it every day. Yeah. And if you're not, figure out how to get that passion back.
Yeah. Or find the thing that you really are passionate about if it's not that. Definitely.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you said too is go out there and do it. That is a huge component. The more conversations you have, the more feedback you get, the more you realize that you actually have a knack for the thing that you're doing in a way that it's hard to acknowledge if you are not doing the work itself. And sometimes that can look like a lot of conversations or inviting people to their first free coaching call or whatever. But yeah, getting out there and actually hitting the pavement metaphorically or literally to have those conversations is hugely important.
Yeah, I live by no regrets. I think this lifetime's short. Do what you love. And there's a great book. It's Gallup now. It's old school Strengthsfinder, where you take it's $20 and it tells you your top 5 strengths. So if you're like, I feel like it is, but I'm not sure, take that easy assessment. It will tell you what you're good at. Yeah. And it's the whole concept of we should be doing what we're good at.
Yeah.
This old school mentality of oh, I'm not good at this. I need to master it and figure it out.
Yeah. Human design is a great resource for that too. Finding what your actual natural capacities are as a person. There's lots of information in there. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So during COVID, when I was feeling not connected and knowing that I wasn't going to be able to go to conferences, and my industry was just trying to figure it out. Some companies had to close. Some companies were so busy they couldn't see straight. I needed to do something that fed what I loved. And it was a brainstorming session when we were looking at rebranding my business. And somebody came up with snack. I was like, there's nothing bite-sized about what I do that doesn't fit what I do. But I had been thinking about a podcast. And I was like, it would be a perfect podcast, right? 15-minute bite-sized pieces of leadership content that people can listen to when they are doing the dishes, when they are driving to get groceries, that's going to inspire them. And so I always have a focus of the month. This month right now that we're in, the focus is kindness. And I interviewed a gentleman who he's part of this kindness initiative in the state of Oregon. And then I have a separate podcast where I reflect and I give tools on the same topic. And I just love it. It totally fed my technology piece, right? I had 8 different platforms I was learning during this time of recording, promoting, all of it. And it just really fed that piece.
That's awesome.
I had no idea that I was going to love it so much, but I do. I just love it.
So everybody you're listening to a podcast right now. So you're already on a podcast platform. You can go and search Snack Leadership Podcast and give that a follow. In a few months, there'll be an episode with me on there too. So it'll be fun.
Yes. I love our episode on connection. So good.
I mean, what are the best places for people to find you, get in touch with you other than the podcast?
Yeah. My website, Spark Your Mindset. Go there. You'll find me as well on social media. I dabble in it. As far as whether it be LinkedIn, probably most, and Facebook and Instagram as well.
Awesome. So Spark Your Mindset, look up Allie Cammelletti, And any last words of wisdom that you want to leave people with?
I will always go with just lead with your heart.
Good advice. It's usually safe to follow your heart over your brain.
Right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Allie, for being on the show. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening. Super grateful to get to share your wisdom with my audience. And yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly.
Awesome. And everyone out there, whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason. We'll see you next week.